Imagine yourself wandering through a grand old library. The air smells faintly of aging parchment and beeswax. Sunlight filters softly through high, dust-dappled windows. Every creaking wooden floorboard beneath your feet whispers of centuries gone by. Among the endless rows of books, your fingers drift over leather spines until one particular volume catches your eye. Its binding is cracked. Its pages worn. The title, etched in gold, simply reads, "Beauty Through the Ages." You open it slowly, and suddenly you're no longer standing in the library. You're somewhere else entirely. You find yourself in the echoing corridors of time, where cosmetics weren't merely powders or potions, but bold declarations of status, defiance, and sometimes quiet danger. This story begins not with lipstick or eyeliner, but with lead, mercury, and belladonna, poisons that found their way onto the delicate skin of queens, courtesans, and commoners alike. Why, you may wonder, would a woman ever choose to apply something poisonous to her own face? The answer, like so many in history, is layered, shaped by vanity, expectation, fashion, and fear. So tonight, let us wander gently through these curious paths. Let us slip quietly into the bedrooms and boudoirs of women who lived centuries ago. Let us watch as they dab creams onto pale cheeks, or draw fine lines around the eyes, sometimes in candlelight, sometimes under flickering gas lamps. And let us listen to the world outside their windows, the bustle of ancient marketplaces, the murmurs of palace intrigue, the clatter of 18th century heels on cobblestone streets. In this calm and steady journey, we'll explore their daily rituals, uncover historical accounts of beauty and danger, touch upon forgotten ingredients and the mysterious art of early cosmetics, all while keeping our tone gentle and measured. So, settle in. Rest your limbs. Let the rhythm of history begin to lull you. And let us start, as we so often must, with a woman standing before a mirror, dabbing a bit of something white and smooth onto her cheeks. A little more. Just enough to make her pale. Just enough to be beautiful. Imagine, if you will, a softly lit room in a European town in the 1600s. The sun has not yet fully risen, and the light that seeps in through the mullioned windows is weak, pale, and grey. The hearth has gone cold overnight, and there's a faint chill clinging to the air. In the corner, a small fire begins to crackle to life as a young woman, perhaps in her 20s, begins her morning ritual. She sits before a wooden vanity table, carved with careful hands. A mirror, polished but imperfect, reflects her face, a face still marked with sleep. On the table before her are jars, brushes, cloths, and tiny pots made of porcelain, glass, or tin. There is no sound but the soft scrape of a chair being pulled, the gentle pop of a jar being opened, the rhythmic swish of fabric as sleeves are rolled back. The first thing she reaches for is the white paste. It's called Venetian ceruse, a mixture of white lead and vinegar. It looks smooth, almost like thick milk, and it spreads evenly across the skin. Applied with a delicate cloth or fingers, it transforms a warm, natural complexion into something prized and cold, pallor. An emblem of wealth. A sign that the wearer does not labor under the sun like the poor. It was, to many, the essence of beauty. The fashion for paleness was not merely personal preference. It was an indicator of social rank, a subtle language spoken through skin. Tanned skin, weather-worn and sun-darkened, was associated with peasants, with farmers, with those who worked outdoors. Pale skin, smooth, spotless, almost ghost-like, meant you had the luxury to remain indoors, shielded from the elements, protected. And so the women who could afford it would apply the lead-based cream across their faces, their necks, even their chests. The look was meant to be ethereal, flawless, doll-like, almost otherworldly. But the cost of that appearance was rarely discussed in the quiet stillness of the vanity table. Day after day, the lead would accumulate. It would seep into the skin, causing it to flake, to scar, to darken in time. But that damage, when it appeared, would be covered with even more ceruse, more paste, more poison, more perfection. You can almost picture her now, can't you? Applying layer after layer as she hums a quiet tune, perhaps a ballad she learned as a girl, never imagining that each morning, each gentle motion of her fingers, brings her a little closer to decay. She applies a tint of color next. Crushed cochineal beetles, perhaps, giving her cheeks a faint rouge. The contrast between her stark, pale skin and the subtle bloom of red is considered striking. For her lips, she uses a paste that might include mercury or cinnabar, both toxic, but brilliant in hue. They gave the lips a ruby glow, rich and vibrant, ideal for long evenings under candlelight. The eyes are last. She might use coal or soot mixed with goose fat, applied with a tiny stick or fine brush. The darkness around her lashes makes her eyes appear larger. Some women would even drop extracts of belladonna, deadly nightshade, into their eyes to dilate the pupils. It created a dreamy, wide-eyed look that was considered intensely alluring. But belladonna, like lead and mercury, came with a price. Temporary blindness. Dry eyes. In some cases, hallucinations. Still, she looks into the mirror and smiles faintly. This is the face she will show the world today. Far from being an isolated case, this morning's scene was repeated across centuries, cultures, and classes, with variations, of course. In Elizabethan England, in Baroque France, in Renaissance Italy, the ingredients and techniques may have shifted slightly, but the goal remained the same: to achieve an ideal that often bore little resemblance to natural beauty and often came at a hidden cost. Later, as we move through the story, we'll explore the origins of these ingredients. How lead was mined and refined for cosmetic use, how mercury came to be seen as medicinal and beautifying, and how even the most dangerous materials were accepted without question in the pursuit of glamour. But for now, we linger here, in the soft light of morning, with the fire gently crackling and a woman carefully perfecting her appearance, unaware, or perhaps unconcerned, about what lies beneath the layers. Not just on her skin, but in history itself. Let us now drift gently forward in time, to the elegance of 18th century Britain. Imagine the scene. Candlelit ballrooms, where powdered wigs sway to the rhythm of the violin. Gilded carriages moving slowly through the cobbled streets of London. Perfumed fans fluttering in drawing rooms thick with gossip and painted smiles. It is a world of rigid etiquette, elaborate fashion, and relentless judgment. And among the ladies admired, envied, and whispered about, none shone brighter or dimmed more tragically than Maria Gunning. She was called a diamond at the first water, not merely for her beauty, but for how rare, how clear, how dazzling she seemed in the public eye. Born in 1733 in Ireland, Maria Gunning came from a family that was noble but not wealthy. She and her sisters were raised with care and ambition, and it soon became clear that Maria's loveliness could be her family's greatest asset. From the moment she arrived in London, Maria was the subject of fascination. Her skin was so pale it seemed to glow beneath the powder, and her features were said to be as perfect as a porcelain figurine. Wherever she went, crowds gathered. People climbed lampposts to catch a glimpse of her carriage passing by. In theatres, performances paused as the audience turned their attention, not to the stage, but to the box where Maria sat, motionless, painted, and utterly captivating. But her beauty, so carefully crafted and maintained, was also her burden. Like many women of her time, Maria relied on cosmetics that were anything but benign. White lead was the standard base for her complexion, ceruse, again, soft and creamy, applied daily to keep her skin fashionably pale. Over time, the lead would cause the skin to scar, blacken, and peel, which, in turn, led to more makeup, thicker layers, and a cycle that quietly consumed the woman beneath the surface. Maria's cheeks were always delicately flushed, not from youth or health, but from carmine rouge, often containing mercuric sulfide. Her lips, too, bore the familiar crimson hue of cinnabar or mercury-based tint. The powders she wore around her eyes were mixed with ingredients like burnt almonds or even belladonna, used to make the pupils wide and the gaze distant, dreamy, unnatural. At balls and soirees, she looked like a living statue, luminous, untouchable. But behind closed doors, her health began to wane. Friends noticed her growing fatigue. She suffered frequent headaches and dizzy spells. Her skin became increasingly sensitive, breaking out in painful lesions. She was often pale, but not the fashionable sort of pale. It was a sickly, exhausted pallor that no amount of powder could correct. Whispers began to follow her. By the age of 27, Maria Gunning was dead. Some said it was tuberculosis. Others blamed childbirth or a fever. But many who knew her, and many more who speculated from a distance, believed the cause was far simpler. She had slowly poisoned herself in the pursuit of beauty. The phrase "glowed to death" began to circulate, a tragic twist on her once celebrated radiance. What had made her shine so brightly had also, quietly, destroyed her. And yet, even after her passing, the trends did not change. The lead-based creams remained popular. The mercury rouge still shimmered on countless cheeks. If anything, Maria's death became part of the mystique of beauty itself, a whispered warning, yes, but also a romantic tale. Beauty so intense, it killed her. In this way, Maria's story reflects a broader truth about her era, and indeed, about many eras before and after. The standards of beauty were not only high, they were punishing. And those who dared to reach for them were often left with unseen scars. Let us pause, for a moment, and imagine her final days. Not as a cautionary tale, but as a young woman resting in a quiet room, far from the eyes of the public. A fire burns low in the grate. Her hand trembles slightly as she lifts the brush to her cheek. Habit, perhaps. Or maybe hope. Or maybe the memory of a time when the world called her the most beautiful woman alive. There's a sadness there, but also something more complex. A reflection, perhaps, of how fragile the line is between admiration and obsession, between elegance and sacrifice. And in Maria's soft, vanishing glow, we see the beginning of a wider pattern, one that stretches across centuries, cultures, and countless vanities. Next, we will explore that pattern more deeply, through forgotten remedies, hidden ingredients, and the curious chemistry of ancient cosmetics. But for now, rest here. Let the candle flicker a little longer. Let the world outside that elegant window fade away. And remember that in history, beauty is never just skin deep. And never entirely safe. Let us now drift further back, before Maria Gunning and her powdered cheeks, before the prim fashions of the English court, to a time when beauty was a kind of alchemy, a quiet blending of plant, mineral, and intention. Imagine an ancient marketplace, perhaps in Alexandria, or Rome, or Babylon. The air is thick with spice, salt, and heat. Linen canopies flutter in a warm breeze. Merchants shout softly, offering powders in tiny ceramic bowls, oils in glass vials wrapped with twine, brushes made from animal hair, and fragrant stones carved into jars. In this bustling cradle of trade and ritual, the earliest forms of cosmetics were born, and with them, the earliest myths about what beauty could be. In many of these ancient civilizations, appearance was not merely vanity. It was protection. It was magic. It was status. And sometimes, it was sacred. The Egyptian elite, for instance, famously lined their eyes with thick kohl, not simply for aesthetic effect, but to ward off the evil eye and protect against the harsh desert sun. This black substance, made from ground galena, a form of lead sulfide, was believed to have antibacterial properties. It also gave the eyes an almond shape, an iconic symbol of beauty that endured for centuries. But coal was not always safe. In high concentrations, galena could seep into the body through the delicate skin around the eyes. While some researchers argue that the dose was likely small enough to provide protection without much danger, others believe repeated exposure could lead to chronic health effects over time. Still, it was applied faithfully, day after day, by queens, scribes, merchants, and even children. Elsewhere, in ancient Greece and Rome, pale skin was once again the fashion. Women sought to lighten their complexions using powders made from white lead, chalk, or ground oyster shells. Lead-based formulas, called Cymithian by the Greeks and ceruse by the Romans, became incredibly popular. They were often mixed with oils or vinegars to form a smooth paste that could be applied in the morning and refreshed throughout the day. But the mystery of beauty lay not only in what was applied, but in how it was prepared. Imagine a Roman woman. Wealthy, educated, perhaps married to a senator, overseeing her household's cosmety, or slave beauticians. These women, skilled in the arts of preparation, would grind minerals, boil herbs, and stir mixtures over coals. A bit too much vinegar, and the cream might burn the skin. Too little, and it would flake. The balance was delicate, and the results, when successful, could grant a glow that poets wrote about. Yet, few paused to question what the long-term effects of these materials might be. Mercury, too, entered the picture. Known for its mysterious, liquid sheen, mercury was both revered and feared. It was included in salves for smoothing skin, in concoctions meant to revitalize aging faces, and even in treatments for blemishes or freckles. Applied in small amounts, it gave the skin a subtle shine. But over time, mercury could cause tremors, mood changes, memory loss, and, as physicians would later note, a gradual decline in vitality. Still, ancient recipes continued to appear in scrolls and manuscripts. Some were passed from mother to daughter. Others were guarded secrets of court physicians and royal attendants. Here is one such recipe, translated softly from a Greek papyrus. To preserve the bloom of youth, take white lead, pounded fine. Mix with rose oil and vinegar. Stir until smooth. Apply gently before sleep, and the skin will be as the moon. A beautiful sentiment. A dangerous instruction. The mystery deepens when we consider the symbolic nature of these materials. Lead, heavy, white, opaque, was thought to embody purity. Mercury, quicksilver, seemed to dance and shimmer like the divine. To apply such things to one's skin was to borrow their qualities. To adorn oneself with gold dust or lapis lazuli was not merely decoration, but a form of transformation. Cosmetics were not only beauty tools. They were aspirations made tangible, hopes painted onto skin, fears masked by powder, dreams infused into oils. Let us pause here and imagine one of these ancient women. She sits quietly in the shade of her courtyard, a bowl of crushed iris root in her lap. Her maidens bring her jars, cloths, water from the cistern. The air smells faintly of lavender and vinegar. She lifts a small mirror, polished bronze, and examines her reflection. It's imperfect, distorted. But still, she dabs a fine brush into the powder, and begins. One stroke across each cheek. A light touch at the temples. A line along the eye, so small it vanishes when she smiles. To us, this might seem like ritual. Or theatre. Or perhaps folly. To her, it is simply part of the day. A part of being seen. A part of surviving in a world that watched women's faces more closely than it listened to their words. And as we leave this quiet courtyard, the mystery of ancient cosmetics lingers in the air, half alchemy, half tradition. A gentle paradox, brushed across centuries. In the next chapter of our journey, we will wander into the world of royal courts and velvet cloaks, to see how queens and empresses used these same toxic tools not just for beauty, but for power. But for now, let your mind rest on these distant powders and perfumes, and the hands that once held them. Now, imagine the hush of royal corridors. The soft rustle of silk trailing along a polished marble floor. A gentle knock. A lady-in-waiting enters with a tray. Silver. Steam curls softly from a porcelain cup. It smells faintly of cloves. The queen is already awake, seated by the window. Her skin is pale, almost ghostly, and her eyes, darkly rimmed, hold a glint of practiced calm. Today, as on every other morning, she will be painted. In this segment, we step quietly into the boudoirs of power, where beauty was not just appearance, but performance. Where the layers of lead and vermilion were not merely fashion choices, but political tools. Where queens and courtesans alike wielded cosmetics as subtly, and sometimes as dangerously, as a sword. Let us begin with one of the most iconic, Elizabeth I of England. She was called the Virgin Queen. A woman without a husband, without children, but certainly not without power. Her reign, spanning over 4 decades, was as marked by diplomacy and war as it was by image. Elizabeth understood the significance of appearance. She crafted her look carefully, not just as a monarch, but as a symbol of stability in an often unsteady world. Her skin, famously white, was the result of daily applications of Venetian ceruse, a white lead paste mixed with vinegar. Over time, Elizabeth suffered from scarring caused by smallpox. Rather than hiding away, she doubled down on the image, applying thick, chalky layers of ceruse to smooth the appearance of her face, to restore the illusion of flawlessness. But her makeup wasn't just about vanity. It was control. In a court of scheming nobles and foreign envoys, the Queen's appearance became a political performance. Her powdered face, her elaborate wigs, her bold eyes, they all communicated a kind of untouchable majesty. To appear unchanged over the years was to appear eternal, unwavering, sovereign. Beneath the thick white paint, her skin likely suffered. But the court did not see that. They saw the icon she had crafted. And they bowed to it. Now drift with me across the Channel, to France, and to the court of Louis XV, where another woman shaped her fate with powders and potions, Madame de Pompadour. She was not born to nobility. But her wit, charm, and calculated elegance allowed her to rise. From the bourgeois class to the role of royal mistress and political advisor. Her beauty rituals were elaborate. Her makeup, pale and smooth, was perfected by her femme de chambre. Rouge was applied in carefully measured circles. Her lips were painted with carmine. Her décolletage dusted with fine starch. Like Elizabeth, Madame de Pompadour knew that in a court obsessed with surface and spectacle, controlling her appearance meant controlling her narrative. She cultivated her image with great care, not too coquettish, not too haughty. Just refined enough to be admired, just soft enough to be approachable. The blend of mercury-based rouge and lead white foundation wasn't merely for allure. It was armor. And behind that carefully managed appearance, she influenced diplomacy, encouraged artistic reform, and helped shape the culture of an entire court. Still, the toxins worked slowly. Day by day, skin thinned. The body weakened. But in that world, beauty was not measured by health, but by adherence to fashion, by the ability to maintain a glowing mask. Even further back, in Renaissance Italy, we find another woman worth pausing for. Lucrezia Borgia, a name steeped in both myth and mystery. The daughter of Pope Alexander VI, Lucrezia lived in a world of shifting alliances, secret plots, and political marriages. Her beauty was praised by ambassadors and envied by nobles. Her long golden hair and luminous skin became the stuff of legend. And like others, she achieved that pale glow through the daily use of ceruse and mercury. Her likeness, captured in paintings, reveals a face both soft and powerful, angelic and severe. It is said that Lucrezia understood how to use cosmetics to project innocence, while rumors swirled about her family's darker dealings. The irony is almost poetic. Her makeup hid blemishes, while her name came to symbolize scandal. Whether those scandals were true or invented, we may never know. But what remains certain is this: women like Lucrezia, Elizabeth, and Pompadour used beauty not to disappear into silence, but to ascend. They crafted their faces as carefully as generals crafted strategies. Their painted skin became a kind of language, one that spoke of ambition, survival, and self-possession. Let us pause again, and imagine a quiet moment. A queen sits at her vanity. The candles are low. The bustle of court is muted behind velvet drapes. A servant gently applies powder to her cheek. She closes her eyes, breathes in the scent of rosewater. For a brief moment, she is not ruler or symbol, but simply a woman, clinging to control in a world that demands perfection. When the makeup is finished, the mirror reflects not just her face, but her power. In the next segment, we'll venture outside the palace, into the narrow streets and smoky salons of cities, where working women, actresses, and courtesans mirrored the trends of the elite, and sometimes shaped them in return. But for now, rest in this royal silence. Let the candle flicker, let the scent of violet powder linger in the air, and drift softly onward with us, as we follow the traces of Lied and Rouge into the wider world beyond the throne. Step now into a quieter part of the city. Away from the palace gates. Away from the halls of Parliament or Versailles. The air is different here, tinged with coal smoke, with perfume, with the distant chatter of markets and taverns. This is the world of women who lived by their wits, their presence, their skill, and often their beauty. The courtesan, the actress, the salon hostess, the singer, the mistress, the woman whose life was lived on a stage, literal or social, and whose face was her introduction, her invitation, her negotiation. And here, too, the poisons of beauty found a place. Imagine a narrow flat in 18th century Paris. Its walls are modest, its furnishing second-hand, but on the dressing table there is an array of little luxuries: a jar of Lied cream, a brush for rouge, a bottle of jasmine oil, and a bowl of crushed pearl dust. A candle flickers nearby, casting shadows across the mirror. A woman, not young, but not old, leans forward and begins to paint her face. She is not nobility. She has no title, no land. But tonight she will be seated in a private opera box, attended by gentlemen of influence. Her face must be flawless. The white of her cheeks must catch the light. The crimson of her lips must linger in the minds of those who meet her. Her eyes, widened with belladonna, must suggest mystery, softness, allure. Like her royal counterparts, she uses ceruse and vermilion. But without court physicians or trained attendants, she must rely on recipes passed from friend to friend, some clever, others dangerous. Her powders may be impure. Her rouge may contain elements that irritate the skin. But the result is the same: beauty at a cost. In Venice, in Amsterdam, in London's Covent Garden, the pattern repeats. Women in the margins, not queens but courtesans, command attention in salons and theatres. And their beauty rituals reflect their unique position. Neither completely outside society, nor fully accepted by it. They wear the same lead-based cosmetics as noble women, but theirs is a more precarious balance. They must remain desirable but not too bold. Elegant, but not elite. Present, but not permanent. Actresses, too, walked a similar line. In 17th and 18th century England, the stage was both opportunity and stigma. A woman who acted for a living could achieve fame, and sometimes fortune, but she also risked being seen as immoral. Her appearance was her advertisement, and her reputation depended on her ability to be admired from afar and yet remain just out of reach. Many actresses adopted the trends of the elite: pale faces, rouged cheeks, bold lips. Some even painted blue veins on their skin to appear more delicate, more translucent, more aristocratic. Let us pause here and picture one such actress. She's in her dressing room. The curtain rises in half an hour. Outside, the theatre is filling with voices. Inside, she smooths a cream across her jawline. It stings slightly, but she ignores it. Next comes the rouge. She knows just how much to use. Not too much, she's playing a widow tonight, but enough to be seen from the third row. The belladonna drops come last. She blinks as they burn softly in her eyes. But when she looks up at herself in the mirror, she is no longer simply a woman. She is a role. A persona. A presence. The audience will never know what it took to make her shine. They will see only the shimmer, the silhouette, the smooth skin lit by footlights. They will not see the rawness beneath. And yet, despite the dangers, these women continued their rituals. Because in a world where a woman's future could depend on a glance from a patron, a prince, or a playwright, the painted face was a form of survival. There's a strange sort of power in that. Fragile, yes, but real. These women weren't merely victims of fashion. They were participants in it. Innovators. They adapted elite trends to suit their needs. They recycled crushed berries and ground shells when carmine was too dear. They turned perfume into presents. They mixed lemon juice with egg whites for a tight, glossy sheen on their skin. Sometimes it worked. Sometimes it burned. But always, it meant something. Let us rest here for a moment. Picture a quiet street at night. A lantern flickers above a wooden sign. A woman walks home alone, her face still painted, though the evening is over. She looks up at the stars. She hums a song from the performance. Her rouge is beginning to crack. Her hands are cold. But for a few hours, she was the most watched person in the room. And that, sometimes, was enough. In the next segment, we'll explore how these beauty rituals, dangerous as they were, found their way into daily life for ordinary women, how poisons once reserved for queens became common tools in countless homes. But for now, breathe softly. Let the stage curtain fall. Let the city's noise drift into a hum. And let your thoughts linger on the faces of those who painted beauty onto their lives, one layer at a time. Let us now draw closer to the quiet heart of the home. No longer the gilded courts of queens or the lit stages of actresses. We are in the kitchens, the parlors, the quiet corners of modest homes. In towns, in villages, in neighborhoods where the air smells of hearth smoke and drying laundry, where children chase chickens outside, and where beauty still matters, though it takes on different shades. In this segment, we slow our steps and listen to the rhythms of daily life. Here, the rituals of beauty are not grand performances, but quiet habits woven into ordinary routines, and yet, even here, the poisons of elegance found their way in. Imagine a woman, perhaps a baker's wife, or a seamstress, or a governess, rising before dawn. She stirs the morning porridge, sweeps the hearth, tends to the fire. And as the household begins to stir, she retreats briefly to a small wooden box tucked beneath her bed. Inside, the mirror, a powder puff, a jar of homemade cream. These humble cosmetics were not made by court perfumers or purchased from Parisian apothecaries. They were mixed at home, with ingredients found in kitchens, gardens, or local markets. Some were harmless: beeswax, egg white, rosewater. Others, less so: white lead scraped from old paint, mercury sublimate acquired from a local chemist, or beauty washes sold at fairs that promised a smooth skin, but contained arsenic. By the 18th and 19th centuries, the beauty ideals once reserved for nobility had filtered steadily downward. Pale skin was still in fashion, and for women who worked indoors, maids, tutors, shopkeepers, it became possible, and often desirable, to adopt the look of their wealthier peers. Advertisements appeared in newspapers offering miracle creams and face powders. Traveling salesmen sold boxes of French complexion powder or of lily-white face enamel, often without listing their ingredients. Some contained bismuth, which caused a pearly sheen on the skin, and sometimes blackened in the presence of sulfur, leaving the wearer with a mottled complexion. Others included zinc oxide or chalk. Gentler alternatives to lead, but not always as effective in achieving the coveted pale, matte finish. And so, many women returned to lead-based creams, despite warnings, despite rumors, despite the way their skin tingled or their hair thinned or their gums bled after years of use. Still, these signs were rarely linked to cosmetics by the women who used them. When one feels tired, it is simply blamed on the weather. When the skin breaks out, it is said to be from stress. Few suspected that the powder they dusted across their cheeks each morning was gradually seeping into their bloodstream. The connection between cosmetics and health was hazy at best. Science was evolving slowly. And in many communities, folk remedies and hearsay carried more weight than physicians' warnings. There was also shame. To admit one used cosmetics, particularly in Protestant regions or among working-class circles, was sometimes considered vain, improper, or deceitful. And so, the women who did paint their faces often did so quietly, in the privacy of their bedrooms, with the windows shuttered, with only a mirror for company. Picture one such moment now. A young woman, perhaps 20 years old, seated at a table beside a bowl of warm water. Her hands smell of soap. She dries them and lifts a small tin, its label worn, its contents white and chalky. She dips a fingertip inside and applies it beneath her eyes. Just a little. Just enough to brighten her face before walking into town. She knows that her employer expects her to look presentable. She knows that pale skin will be seen as refined. She knows, too, that the cream stings sometimes. But she pushes that thought aside. Because beauty, even here, in modest rooms and plain dresses, still has value. Still opens doors. Still invites praise. In working-class taverns and Sunday church services, these touches of beauty, the faint rouge, the powdered skin, the slightly widened pupils from belladonna drops, allowed women to carve out dignity and presence in a world that often overlooked them. And for many, it was a small act of self-possession. A quiet rebellion against the drabness of daily life. A way to feel seen. Over time, the recipes and tools evolved. Some mothers taught their daughters how to make safer creams with oatmeal and honey. Others warned them against the use of powders altogether. But the allure remained. The advertisements grew slicker. The promises bolder. By the end of the 19th century, the mass production of beauty products had begun, and with it, a tidal wave of new formulations, some improved, others simply repackaged versions of old dangers. But before we leap into that industrial age, let us rest once more in the small, flickering world of these ordinary women. Their lives were not recorded in grand history books. Their names are mostly forgotten. But their routines, their quiet mornings before the mirror, are no less part of the long and winding story of beauty. Let the fire fade now. Let the wooden floor cool beneath bare feet. Let the soft scent of rosewater drift upward from the bowl. And drift gently with it into the next chapter, where the world of cosmetics will begin to change, not just in composition, but in purpose. Now we find ourselves standing quietly at the threshold of a changing world. The fires of the Industrial Revolution burn in the distance. Cities swell. Machines hum. The pace of life, once dictated by the sun and the seasons, begins to tick to the beat of factory whistles and gas lamps. And in this new rhythm, beauty, like everything else, becomes mass-produced. We move gently now from hand-mixed pastes and homemade powders into neat boxes on pharmacy shelves, into gleaming glass bottles arranged beneath electric lights. The age of the beauty industry has begun. And with it, the poisons that once passed discreetly between court attendants and housemaids begin to spread more widely, more quietly, wrapped in labels, sealed with gold foil, and advertised in newspapers beside tea kettles and sewing machines. Imagine a shop on a grey London street, sometime in the 1890s. The windows are dressed with velvet curtains, and behind them, arranged carefully on wooden shelves, sit dozens of glass jars and tins. Mme Renault's Parisian Face Cream. The Belle Glow Complexion Reviver. Dr. Lowell's Skin Tonic. Each promises smoothness. Each promises youth. None list their ingredients. A woman steps inside. Perhaps she's middle-aged, tired of the fine lines beginning to appear around her mouth. Perhaps she's younger, simply chasing the ideal she sees on posters, women with porcelain skin, deep red lips, and bright, luminous eyes. She selects a jar that smells faintly of violets. She doesn't know that it contains mercuric chloride, a compound that lightens the skin by stripping away its upper layers and inhibiting melanin production. It works, at first. Her freckles fade. Her complexion brightens. But soon, there are other effects: tingling, peeling, sensitivity to light. Still, she uses it. Because the image in the mirror is what she wants to see. Because the ads promise transformation. And because now, at last, she doesn't have to mix it herself. This is the quiet revolution of commercial cosmetics. For the first time, products that once belonged to noble women or clever courtesans are now within reach of secretaries, seamstresses, and suburban mothers. Beauty becomes democratic. Accessible. Marketable. But with mass production comes mass exposure. What was once a localized problem, a few women becoming ill from homemade lead creams, now becomes a public health concern. Across Europe and North America, cases of mercury poisoning rise among women who use skin lighteners daily. Some go blind. Some lose their hair. Some suffer nervous tremors. Doctors begin to take notice. Yet manufacturers remain silent. The industry, still in its infancy, is largely unregulated. Ingredient lists are considered proprietary. Labels are vague. Mineral salts, they say. or refined botanical extracts. These phrases sound soothing, but they often conceal substances like arsenic, ammonia, bismuth, or carbolic acid. Some companies even use radium, recently discovered, glowing softly in the dark, believed to be invigorating and youth-preserving. In the early 1900s, radium is added to face creams, lipsticks, and powders. The glow it provides seems magical. But within years, factory workers handling these products, especially the infamous radium girls, begin to die from jaw necrosis, anemia, and cancers. Still, many consumers continue to buy. Because beauty, now more than ever, is tied to identity, to worth, to modernity, to confidence. And the messaging grows louder. You're worth it. Reveal your inner radiance. Don't let age show. The words we still hear today had their roots in this era. Let us slow again and picture a woman in 1910. She sits in a parlor, her children asleep in the next room. On the table before her is a new jar of cream, its glass frosted, its label embossed. She opens it carefully, dips her finger inside, smooths it onto her cheek. It tingles. She tells herself it means it's working. She doesn't know that the tingling is the first sign of the skin's natural barrier being compromised. She doesn't know that her blood is slowly absorbing what her skin cannot process. She only knows that her reflection is changing, that she looks fresher, that perhaps, just perhaps, she's caught up, even briefly, with the images on the magazine pages. And in a world where women are entering the workforce in growing numbers, as telephone operators, shop clerks, typists, appearance begins to feel like currency. A painted face is not frivolous. It is armor in the modern world. Still, the poisons persist, hidden beneath perfumes and pigments. In the next segment, we will explore the voices that began to rise against this quiet danger, doctors, journalists, and eventually governments, and how the movement toward regulation began. But even then, the struggle between glamour and safety was anything but simple. For now, rest in this strange moment, where factory and vanity met, where modern packaging hid ancient dangers, and where women across the world dipped their fingers into jars of elegance. Unaware of what shimmered beneath the surface. Let the factory hum fade now. Let the gaslights dim. And let us drift gently toward the age of awareness. Let us now enter a time of questioning. The soft glow of powder puffs and perfume bottles has not dimmed, but somewhere behind it, a new kind of flicker begins to rise, not from candles or gaslight, but from paper. Newspaper pages, pamphlets, medical journals. Words begin to appear that suggest something is not quite right. In hushed tones and small print, voices whisper warnings. And slowly, they begin to be heard. We are now in the early decades of the 20th century, a time when science and society began to move cautiously toward the truth. The poisons that had danced silently through centuries of beauty practice were now being studied, debated, and, for the first time, regulated. But it did not happen all at once. Let us pause in a quiet corner of a public library in New York, around 1913. The air is cool. Dust floats in sunbeams cutting across rows of wooden tables. A young journalist leans over an open book. Her notebook is filled with scribbled names of products, notes on ingredients, references to hospital cases. She is writing about something few have dared to address, the danger in the vanity jar. She is not alone. In this era, women's advocacy groups, physicians, and early consumer protection organizations began collecting case studies. Stories of women who suffered after prolonged use of complexion creams and whitening powders. The symptoms varied: headaches, tremors, fatigue, skin peeling, even organ failure. What connected them all was mercury, lead, or arsenic, often unlabeled, always unacknowledged. Doctors began to speak up. One early example came from Dr. Frederick J. Calvert, who warned in medical journals of the steady rise in cosmetic-induced illness among middle and upper-class women. He called attention to products like Laird's Bloom of Youth and Dr. Campbell's Safe Arsenic Complexion wafers, both of which contain potentially fatal doses of toxic compounds. Still, the manufacturers denied any wrongdoing. Beauty, after all, was a profitable business. And fear, cleverly masked, could be repackaged as a lure. Some products even leaned into their danger. Ads promised that a slight stinging sensation was a sign of purification. That a burning flush meant the product was working deeply. That redness and peeling were merely the old skin being swept away. Imagine now a modest department store counter in 1920 Chicago. A clerk in a crisp uniform stands behind a gleaming glass display. Rows of creams, powders, and lipsticks glimmer beneath the lights. A young woman steps forward. She lifts a bottle labeled Venetian Snow. It promises to erase freckles. The clerk assures her it's the same brand used by starlets in Hollywood. She buys it, takes it home, applies it before dinner. She will never read about the small legal battle between the product's makers and a woman who suffered kidney failure after years of use. She will never meet the chemist who analyzed the product and found it to be 12% mercury. But behind the scenes, these stories are growing harder to ignore. By the 1930s, after years of investigative work and scattered lawsuits, the call for regulation became louder. In the United States, it was not until 1938, with the passing of the Federal Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act, that the government finally gained power to oversee cosmetic safety. This legislation did not ban all dangerous ingredients outright, but it established that cosmetics must be accurately labeled and that manufacturers were responsible for ensuring product safety. It was a beginning. Other countries followed. In Britain, toxic cosmetic products were increasingly scrutinized by public health boards. In France, the perfume capital of the world, regulations were slower but eventually emerged through public demand and pressure from women's publications. Let us imagine another moment now. A woman reading a magazine article in 1940. The article warns against lead acetate in hair dyes. She puts down the product she's used for years. The label doesn't mention lead. But she decides, quietly, to try something else. She doesn't know it, but she's become part of a silent shift, one that will unfold over the next century. It's important to note that many products still remained unregulated, and enforcement was uneven. Some dangerous compounds continued to be used under different names. Some were added in lower concentrations. And some were simply replaced with new, equally untested substances. But for the first time in history, beauty was being examined not only through the lens of fashion, but through science. Chemists began to reformulate popular products. New preservatives were tested. Safer pigments were explored. And a new generation of consumers, increasingly literate, increasingly vocal, began to demand transparency. Still, the path was slow. Even in the 1950s and 60s, mercury compounds continued to appear in certain eye products and skin creams, particularly in markets outside Europe and North America. The illusion of safety, clean packaging, celebrity endorsements, charming names, often masked what lay within. It was, and remains, a balancing act between trust and truth. Let us rest here, briefly. Picture the women who wrote letters to consumer protection groups. The mothers who tossed away old powder tins. The pharmacists who refused to stock certain brands. Their acts were small. Often quiet. But together they shifted the world. In the next segment, we'll step into the mirror-bright world of modern beauty, where regulation, branding, and science now coexist, but where questions still linger. For now, breathe. Let the newspapers rest on their desks. Let the chemist's notes blur on the page. And let us drift forward toward the fluorescent-lit shelves of the present day. And now, we arrive gently into the present. You're standing in a modern drugstore. The overhead lights are soft, humming faintly. The air carries the faint scent of cardboard packaging, perfume samples, and freshly mopped tile. Rows of carefully aligned bottles and jars stretch before you, pale pastels, metallic lids, minimalist labels with botanical illustrations and scientific fonts. It's quiet here. Clean. Controlled. But behind each jar is a story, centuries long. And though today's products are far safer than those of the past, the echoes of powdered lead and mercury creams still linger, just beneath the surface. Let's explore this new world of beauty, not through scandal or science fiction, but through the quiet tension between safety and desire, promise and uncertainty. Modern cosmetic regulation has come a long way. In the United States, the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, now oversees the safety of cosmetic products. In the European Union, strict bans on substances such as formaldehyde, mercury, and hydroquinone are in place. Labels must disclose active ingredients. Warnings must be issued when necessary. But even now, the industry is vast, and oversight, while present, is not all-seeing. Some ingredients, like parabens, phthalates, and sulfates, have sparked concern among consumers and researchers. Though not classified as poisons in the traditional sense, their long-term effects are still debated. Linked in some studies to hormonal disruption or skin sensitivity. Others, like certain fragrance additives, may cause allergic reactions, especially in those with sensitive skin. This has given rise to a new form of beauty culture, the clean beauties movement. Imagine a small, glass-walled boutique in a quiet neighborhood. Inside, the shelves hold jars labeled with words like natural, non-toxic, paraben-free, and vegan. The colors are muted, earthy. The packaging is recyclable. The promises are gentle. This shift is not just about aesthetics, but about reassurance. Today, many consumers seek transparency. They want to know what's in their moisturizers. They ask about the source of pigments. They check whether sunscreen contains nanoparticles or mineral blockers. And brands, eager to meet this demand, now market not just results, but safety as a virtue. Still, the term clean has no universal legal definition. One brand safe is another brand suspect. And so, the conversation continues, not unlike those early newspaper columns warning against mercury in cold cream. We are, in many ways, repeating a cycle, but with new language. Now the concern is not whether a cream will burn the skin or bleach the face, but whether it contains endocrine disruptors, whether it contributes to microplastic pollution, whether it was tested on animals. And these are valid questions. They reflect a deepening awareness of the body's relationship to the environment and of beauty's role in that delicate balance. But for the modern woman, or man, or non-binary person standing before the mirror in the morning, the ritual is still the same in many ways. You wake. You wash your face. You apply a cream. Perhaps a serum. Perhaps a light foundation. You smooth your eyebrows. You dab your lips with color. You are doing what generations before you did. But now, you are also navigating a new world, one filled with product claims, clinical studies, influencers, dermatologists, and digital reviews. One where a 15-second video can change the fate of a global brand. One where beauty is no longer silent, but debated, dissected, and personalized. Let us pause here and picture a gentle morning in a quiet apartment. A person stands before a bathroom mirror. Outside, traffic murmurs softly. Inside, a candle flickers on the counter. They open a bottle of moisturizer, its label clean, its contents scentless. They apply it slowly, feeling the coolness sink in. They're not seeking transformation. Just comfort. Softness. A moment of care before the day begins. This, too, is beauty. And it is no less sacred for its modern form. Yet, even now, despite the advances, some products slip through the cracks. Some manufacturers operate in loosely regulated markets. Some skin-lightening creams, sold discreetly in markets or online, still contain mercury, especially in parts of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Old habits die hard. So do old ideals. Even today, in some communities, paleness is still seen as superior. Skin tone becomes currency. Colorism, inherited from colonial and class-based histories, fuels demand for dangerous creams. And so, the silent poison still whispers in some corners of the world. Just as it did in the courts of Versailles, in the markets of Rome, in the boudoirs of Victorian England. But there is resistance. Advocates and educators across the globe are fighting back. Campaigns are launched. Safe alternatives are introduced. The language of self-love, of diverse beauty, of dignity beyond skin tone, it grows louder every year. Let us rest again and reflect. History is not a straight line. It loops and returns. But in each return, something has changed. Today, beauty is still sought, but often more gently. With more questions. With more knowledge. With fewer secrets. The jar on the shelf may still promise radiance. But now, the one who lifts the lid is armed not just with longing, but with awareness. In the next segment, we will explore how these shifting ideals, about what is beautiful and what is dangerous, influence not only what we put on our skin, but how we see ourselves and each other. But for now, let the modern world settle. Let the shelves go quiet. Let the mirror reflect not flaws, but presence. And let yourself drift onward. There is a stillness in front of the mirror. You may have felt it yourself, that moment in the early morning, or just before bed, when the light is soft and the reflection is honest. You lean forward. You look closely. And what do you see? A face shaped not only by genetics and time, but by history, by centuries of ideals, trends, warnings, and whispers. By what was once hidden in powders and jars. By what was once called beautiful. In this segment, we turn gently from ingredients and packaging, and we begin to look at the more delicate matter, perception. Because the poisons of beauty were never only in creams. Sometimes, they linger in expectation. Let us begin with an old painting. A portrait of a noblewoman from the 1600s. Her face is pale, almost unnaturally so. Her eyebrows are thin and arched. Her lips are small, painted heart. Around her neck, a lace collar spreads like a halo. She looks serene. Elegant. But this image was never meant to be truthful. It was designed to flatter, to idealize, to present a version of beauty that met the moment's standard. And today, we do the same. But with filters. With angles. With gentle editing apps that promise a little smoothing here, a little brightness there. This is not criticism. It is continuity. From lead white paint to soft light filters, the longing to look just a little better has been with us always. The standard of beauty, however, has shifted again and again. There was a time when a high forehead was prized, and women plucked their hairlines to achieve it. A time when voluptuousness symbolized wealth. A time when paleness meant virtue, and later, when tanned skin suggested leisure. Each generation has offered its own version of the ideal. And with each, women, and later, men, have responded. Adjusted. Adapted. And often, quietly suffered. In the 1950s, the hourglass figure was idealized, and women cinched their waists tightly, sometimes bruising ribs to achieve the effect. In the 1990s, thinness became the standard, and crash dieting quietly replaced rouge and rice powder as the tools of transformation. In the 2010s, it was the sculpted cheekbone, the perfect brow, the glowing skin without pores. Each time, beauty was whispered into our minds through advertising, magazines, films, and more recently, through screens we carry in our hands. Imagine now a young person scrolling through images on a phone late at night. Each face appears effortlessly beautiful, luminous skin, symmetrical features, bright eyes. The effect is almost hypnotic. But behind each image is a product. A camera. A setting. Perhaps a bit of editing. And, deeper still, a world of comparison. The mirror becomes less a place of recognition and more a space of evaluation. But what if we pause? What if, instead of judging, we observed? What if, like the ancient Egyptians, we treated the mirror as sacred, not because it shows perfection, but because it shows presence? There is quiet power in looking at oneself with care rather than critique. And while history shows us that ideals are powerful, it also shows us that they are temporary. Fashions change. Skin tones rise and fall in favor. Nose shapes, eyebrow angles, lip fullness, all of these have shifted countless times. What remains is the person beneath. Let us return now to a quieter image. A woman in the 1800s, seated by candlelight. She is not young, not old. Her face bears traces of time and weather and laughter. She lifts a small mirror and sees herself. She smooths her skin with rose oil. She applies no powder tonight. She has nothing to prove. The room is quiet. She smiles softly and sets the mirror down. In that moment, she is whole. The pressure to perfect is not new. But awareness is growing. Today, there are conversations, gentle and insistent, about body neutrality, about aging gracefully, about embracing diversity in all its forms. The idea that beauty can mean many things. That it is shaped as much by kindness, curiosity, and presence as it is by contouring or symmetry. Still, the mirror waits. It always will. But now, perhaps, we can greet it not with shame, but with softness. Not with correction, but with curiosity. What has changed since yesterday? What remains? What does this face, unique, complex, and quietly miraculous, wish to tell us? In the next segment, we'll take a step beyond the personal and explore how cultural ideals around beauty have been shaped and sometimes exported through colonialism, advertising, and globalization. The poisons, it seems, were not always physical. Sometimes they came through language, through systems, through silence. But for now, rest. Let the mirror dim. Let the reflection blur. And let yourself sink, slowly, into the comfort of knowing that every face carries history, including yours. Let us now drift across oceans. Gently. Without hurry. From the cobbled streets of Paris and the gaslit shops of London, we sail softly toward distant shores, places with long histories of their own, deep traditions, rich textures. And yet, as colonial powers expanded, they did not only bring soldiers and trade, they brought standards. Among them, beauty standards. And so, the pale face, once the mark of European aristocracy, found its way into lands where the sun was constant and complexions varied in beautiful tones of gold, copper, mahogany, and umber. Here, in the tropical light of Southeast Asia, in the red dust of East Africa, in the cities and villages of the Caribbean and Latin America, a strange transformation began. Let us pause, for a moment, in Manila, perhaps in the early 1900s. The Philippines, long influenced by Spanish rule and then under American control, is awash in new products, new ideals. A young woman walks into a shop where beauty creams sit beside soaps and powders imported from the West. She reads the label of a cream promising purity and clarity. It includes calomel, a mercury compound. She does not know this. She only sees the image on the label, a pale-skinned woman, softly smiling, her features delicate and unblemished. She buys it, takes it home, applies it that evening. It will become part of her routine. In colonized societies, paleness became associated with access to education, to higher status, to proximity to colonial authority. Those with lighter skin were often treated more favorably in public spaces, employed more readily, and idealized in media and literature. These attitudes were reinforced subtly, and not so subtly, in schools, in churches, in films, and eventually in advertising. In India, long after independence, light skin remained prized in matrimonial ads and cinema. In parts of Africa, skin lightening creams became a booming market by the mid-20th century. In the Caribbean, children were taught that good hair and fair skin opened more doors. Let us imagine now a woman in Lagos, Nigeria, in the 1970s. She is respected in her community, a teacher, perhaps. But as magazines and imported beauty products become more common, she sees advertisements suggesting that modern women use Fair and Lovely, a cream developed specifically to lighten skin. It's widely available, affordable, and heavily marketed. She tries it, just a little at first. The results are slow. She adds more. Weeks pass. The compliments begin. People say she looks brighter, fresher. The validation is gentle, but persistent. But so is the damage. The cream contains hydroquinone, sometimes mixed with mercury compounds or corticosteroids. Over time, her skin becomes fragile, sensitive to sun, thin, uneven. She is not alone. In Jamaica, in South Africa, in Thailand, in Brazil, in Pakistan. Around the world, millions of women and men begin to use lightening products as part of daily life. And so, the pale ideal that once hovered behind the faces of European queens now stretches across continents, embedded in packaging, campaigns, slogans. But it is not an ancient tradition in these places. It is, rather, a colonial echo. And while some societies had pre-colonial ideals related to complexion, often tied to indoor labor versus outdoor work, the intense association of paleness with superiority, elegance, and worth was sharpened and globalized by colonial structures. Let us rest here. Picture a shop in Nairobi, or Port of Spain, or Hanoi. Behind the counter, dozens of jars: lily white, ivory glow, snow beauty, white radiance. The names are soft, but the implications are sharp. These names do not celebrate diversity. They narrow it. And for many, the use of these products is not about vanity, but about survival in a world where being darker can mean discrimination, exclusion, or even danger. The question, then, is not why would someone do this? But rather, what has the world taught them to believe about their face? In recent years, there has been growing resistance to this quiet legacy. Movements like Dark is Beautiful in India or Melanin Magic in the United States, and numerous campaigns across Africa and Asia, are reclaiming natural skin tones as beautiful, worthy, and whole. In 2020, after global protests and criticism, the makers of Fair and Lovely announced a name change, removing the word fair. Other companies followed. The language began to soften. But the products are still sold. The ideals still quietly circulated. Let us slow once more. A teenager in Bangladesh opens a drawer and sees her mother's cream, labeled with roses and words like brightening. She wonders if she should try it. She does not hate her face. But she notices which girls in school are praised more often. She notices the faces in music videos, on wedding flyers. And so the question returns. With new packaging, the long reach of beauty's poisons, physical and psychological, has crossed borders more easily than many goods or ideas. And even today, in a supposedly globalized world, there are complex hierarchies of beauty still at play. But slowly, gently, they are being named. And what is named can be changed. In the next segment, we'll explore the resilience behind these traditions. The ancient, local, and indigenous beauty practices that have survived despite colonial standards. The rituals that never relied on poisons. The expressions of care and celebration rooted in the earth, in ancestry, in joy. But for now, rest. Let the borders blur. Let the labels fade. And let us imagine a world where every complexion is simply enough. Let us now return to something quieter. Something older. Something that does not whisper promises from glass jars or flicker in magazine spreads, but instead rises gently from the land, from memory, from tradition. Not all beauty has been shaped by toxic powders or imported ideals. In many corners of the world, often far from the laboratories and perfume houses of Europe, beauty has long been practiced as ritual, not performance. As care, not concealment. As an expression of connection to the body, to the earth, to the community. Let us walk slowly through these landscapes. Begin in the warm, dry air of North Africa. In Morocco, Berber women have, for centuries, used gasol clay, drawn from the Atlas Mountains. Mixed with rosewater or orange blossom water, it becomes a smooth, cooling paste used to cleanse the skin and hair. There is no poison here. Only minerals. Earth. Tradition. Or imagine the argan tree, whose nuts are cracked open, often by hand, often by women, to produce oil. This oil, rich and golden, is massaged into the face not to lighten it, but to soften, to nourish, to protect. There is no shame in these rituals. No comparison. Only rhythm. Travel next, in your mind, to the rainforests of the Amazon. There, indigenous communities have used crushed urucum seeds, rich in color and antioxidants, to protect the skin from the sun and insects. The bright red pigment is worn not only for beauty but for ceremony, for identity. It is not about erasing features or appearing lighter. It is about being seen. Fully. On one's own terms. Now drift across the Pacific. In Polynesia, mono oil, made by steeping gardenia petals in coconut oil, has been used for generations to perfume and soften the skin. The scent is gentle, the touch light. It is applied after bathing, sometimes before sleep, sometimes before gatherings. Again, no rush. No sting. No harshness. Beauty here is not urgent. Continue onward to East Asia. In Japan, long before Western powders arrived, women used rice bran water to wash their faces, a gentle cleanser rich in vitamins. It brightened the complexion subtly, softened the skin naturally, and was part of a broader practice of layered care, where each step was mindful, deliberate, and calm. The camellia oil used by geishas to remove makeup and moisturize skin was also a staple, pressed from seeds and rich in omega fatty acids. Let us rest briefly with this image. A woman seated before a lacquered mirror. The room is still. She dips a cloth into a bowl of warm rice water. Gently, she presses it to her cheek. She is not hiding. She is not changing. She is tending. Beauty here is like tea. Steeped. Subtle. In India, too, beauty traditions have long been rooted in Ayurveda, a system of knowledge focused on balance. Pastes made from turmeric, sandalwood, neem, or bisan, chickpea flour, have been applied not to bleach or obscure, but to purify, to cool, to soothe. During weddings, brides often undergo haldi ceremonies, where turmeric paste is gently applied to the face and arms, not as a chemical act, but as a communal blessing. Laughter fills the air. Elders sing. The skin glows not only from the paste but from the warmth of ritual. These are not treatments. They are inheritances. Now travel north, to the Arctic, where Inuit women traditionally used seal oil to moisturize the skin and protect against brutal cold. There is no vanity in this, but even in survival, there is grace. A recognition that the body deserves attention. That the skin is sacred. In each of these places, the materials used, clay, oil, flour, root, were not sold with slogans or sealed with cellophane. They were passed hand to hand, generation to generation. Sometimes applied during moments of solitude. Sometimes woven into the fabric of celebration. And while some of these rituals have faded, many remain. Today, the global beauty industry has begun to rediscover them, often rebranding ancient practices as new trends. But beneath the packaging, the wisdom still sleeps quietly in the memory of women who learned it not from books, but from mothers and grandmothers. Imagine now an elder and a child seated together. The elder grinds herbs slowly with a stone. The child watches. There is no rush. No advertisement. Only the quiet rhythm of tradition. When the mixture is ready, they apply it together. The scent is familiar. The sensation gentle. There are no promises of transformation. Only presence. This is what beauty looked like in many places before poisons. Before mirrors demanded perfection. Before creams whispered correction. It looked like care. Like softness. Like belonging. In the next segment, we will trace how these local practices began to merge with, and sometimes be erased by, the rising tide of international beauty standards in the 20th century. But even as brands multiplied and products expanded, these older rituals never truly vanished. They simply went quiet. Waiting. Breathing. Like the earth itself. Let us rest with them now. Let the grinding stone grow still. Let the oil sink into the skin. Let the songs of grandmothers echo faintly. As we drift onward, Let us drift now into the soft, glowing corridors of the modern marketplace. Walk slowly through a contemporary department store, or perhaps scroll gently through a beauty website on your phone. The screen is bright, the packaging elegant. Clean fonts. Neutral tones. Words like natural, advanced, gentle, and scientifically tested pass before your eyes like waves. But beneath these promises, something stirs, something old, something familiar. Even now, in this age of awareness and regulation, the poisons of the past have not entirely disappeared. They have simply changed their clothes. Imagine a small cream jar, sold online, advertised as herbal lightening treatment. It promises radiance, even tone, spot removal. The jar arrives at your door in a padded envelope. The label is soft green. It smells faintly of lavender and citrus. You apply it. For days, your skin appears smoother. But you notice a slight tingling. A tightness. Then the redness begins. Sensitivity. You check the ingredients, they're vague. Perhaps even falsified. This story is not rare. Across many parts of the world today, counterfeit and unregulated cosmetic products flourish in quiet markets, in online stores, back-alley beauty kiosks, and unlicensed import shops. Often made in facilities with little oversight, these creams, powders, and serums are designed to mimic luxury brands or capitalize on popular trends. And disturbingly, many of them still contain mercury, hydroquinone, corticosteroids, and other ingredients long known to cause skin thinning, kidney damage, or hormonal disruption. The labels rarely reveal the truth. They may list mineral complex instead of mercury chloride, botanical extracts instead of hydroquinone, skin vitamins instead of steroids. The language has grown gentler, but the danger has not. Let us pause now in a quiet clinic. Perhaps in Malaysia, or Kenya, or the Dominican Republic. A young woman sits before a doctor. Her skin is raw. Inflamed. The cream she used came from an online seller. It had hundreds of 5-star reviews. It promised results in just 3 days. The doctor runs tests. Finds elevated mercury levels. Prescribes treatment. Advises stopping use. But the cream was cheap. It worked, she says. And in a world where image is currency, and where safety is expensive, such choices are not made lightly. Even in places with strong regulatory systems, products from unverified sources still find their way to bathroom shelves. Customs officers in the UK, the US, and the EU frequently confiscate shipments of illegal lightening creams. The numbers are in the thousands. In 2022, a survey by the Zero Mercury Working Group found that nearly half of tested skin lightening products from global markets exceeded legal mercury limits, some by hundreds of times. Still, they sell. Because the desire for change, for correction, remains strong. But even mainstream brands, fully legal and polished, sometimes walk a fine line. In the last 2 decades, major cosmetic companies have marketed brightening and whitening lines using language that avoids the word lightening while still suggesting transformation. They rely on niacinamide, vitamin C, alpha-arbutin, safer ingredients, yes. But the messaging often reinforces the same ideal, that lighter skin is better skin. That radiance means paler. And so the legacy of colonial beauty, refined, rebranded, still lingers in aisles and advertisements. Let us imagine now a television commercial. It opens with a woman walking alone, head bowed. Her skin is darkened in the ad, subtly, unnaturally. People ignore her. She seems invisible. Then she uses a product. Her skin lightens. Her clothes brighten. People smile at her. The music swells. She is now beautiful. This kind of narrative, once common in South Asian and African media, has faced growing backlash. Celebrities have apologized for endorsing such products. Some brands have removed their fairness lines. But the emotional undercurrent remains. And where shame once sold powders, now aspiration sells serums. Even as the ingredients improve, the message is harder to detoxify. Let us rest again. Picture a woman, perhaps you know her, or perhaps she is a shadow of many. She has tried dozens of creams. Some stung. Some helped. Some hurt. She no longer remembers which ingredients did what. She only knows that she is tired of adjusting, comparing, concealing. She wants care, not correction. But the market rarely speaks that language. In recent years, movements have begun to push back. Consumer advocacy groups are calling for greater transparency, stricter labeling, and bans on vague ingredient terms. Dermatologists are raising awareness about the dangers of imported counterfeit products. Social media platforms are beginning to flag questionable beauty claims. There is a shift, slow but steady, toward informed beauty. Not perfection. Not illusion. Just honesty. But for that shift to truly settle, the message must go beyond regulation. It must enter the language of beauty itself, how we talk about skin, about texture, about color, about age. Until then, the poisons may vanish from the formula, but remain in the frame. In the next segment, we'll look at how today's digital age has become a double-edged mirror, where beauty is both democratized and distorted by algorithms, influencers, and augmented reality. But for now, let the screen fade. Let the labels blur. Let us close the jar, softly. And imagine a future where beauty is not a mask to wear, but a way to rest. And now, we enter a quieter kind of mirror. It does not hang on the wall. It does not fog with breath or reflect candlelight. It fits in your palm, glowing softly. A phone. A tablet. A screen. This is the modern face of beauty. Lit not by sun or firelight, but by pixels. Here, in this virtual reflection, beauty is no longer only applied, it is rendered. In a matter of seconds, a person can open an app, choose a filter, and watch as their face shifts before their eyes. Skin smooths. Eyes brighten. Cheeks lift. Lips plump. Jawlines refine. And all without touching a single jar or powder puff. Imagine yourself now, scrolling through images on your phone. Post after post. Each face is softly glowing. Each feature perfectly balanced. It seems effortless, natural, even. But beneath the surface, almost every image is curated, adjusted, enhanced. These are not poisons in the traditional sense. No mercury. No lead. But there is something just as potent, the suggestion of flawlessness. This era, the digital era, has transformed beauty into something both accessible and elusive. On one hand, more people than ever are sharing their own appearance. More skin tones, body types, ages, and styles are visible than at any other time in history. But on the other hand, this visibility is often filtered, subtly corrected by built-in tools that erase texture, adjust proportions, or mimic professional lighting. The result is a strange paradox, more faces than ever, yet fewer imperfections. Let us pause here. In the quiet of a bedroom at night, a young woman lies in bed, phone glowing beside her on the pillow. She scrolls. Sees faces she admires. Wonders why hers looks different. She opens the camera, adds a filter, smiles, saves the image. But when she looks in the bathroom mirror the next morning, her real face feels distant. This quiet erosion of self-esteem is not uncommon. Studies now link prolonged use of filtered images to body dysmorphia, anxiety, and a deepening dissatisfaction with natural appearance, especially among young people. Even those who know the filters are fake feel their effects. Because the standard has shifted not to perfection, but to simulation. And while the creams and powders of the past left physical residue, these new tools leave a different kind of trace, emotional, psychological, often invisible. But it's not all shadow. In this same digital space, movements of authenticity have also flourished. Influencers post barefaced selfies with visible pores. Hashtags like #nofilter, #skinpositivity, #barefacechallenge grow steadily. Dermatologists and estheticians share science-backed advice, debunking myths and exposing dangerous trends. And in many corners of the internet, a new kind of beauty is being celebrated, one rooted in real skin, real texture, real variation. There is power here. And tension. Let us imagine now a live stream. The woman removes her makeup on camera. She speaks softly. She shows redness, freckles, a pimple. Comments flood in, some kind, some cruel. But she continues. Steady. Present. Honest. This is not performance. This is reclamation. In this age of endless comparison, choosing to be seen as you are is a radical act. But filters remain popular, not because people are vain, but because people are tired. Tired of always explaining. Always correcting. Always compensating. The filter offers ease. Softness. Control. It is not so different from the white powder of centuries past, a layer between the self and the gaze of others. And yet, the danger is the same. When beauty becomes a mask, the face beneath can begin to feel insufficient. Let us return to a simpler image. A mirror. A real one. No filters. No light tricks. Just you, blinking softly in the morning light. Your skin, exactly as it is. Your eyes, the shape they've always been. No adjustments. No algorithms. Just you. This moment is rare. And precious. Because despite the digital world's speed and sparkle, there is something profoundly human in the act of being still. Of being enough. And slowly, the world is beginning to recognize this. There are now virtual platforms developing anti-filter technologies. Countries proposing legislation to disclose altered images. Schools introducing media literacy to help young minds navigate digital beauty standards with clarity. It is only the beginning. In the final segment, we'll step back, far back, and look at beauty itself. Not as a trend or a trap, but as something deeper. Something human. We'll ask, why do we seek it at all? What does it give us? What does it cost? But for now, set the phone aside. Let the screen go dark. Let your reflection return to stillness. And remember, every face you've seen, in paintings, powders, portraits, or pixels, has been touched by time, by culture, by longing. And every face, including yours, carries its own quiet beauty. Let us now step back. Away from the powders, the filters, the creams. Away from the rituals, the mirrors, the jars with whispered promises. Let us return to a quiet place, not of faces, but of questions. Why has beauty mattered so much? Why did women and men, for centuries, risk their health, their comfort, even their lives, in the pursuit of a different appearance? Why did they put poison on their faces? The answer, like history itself, is not simple. It was never just about looking better. It was rarely just about vanity. Beauty has long been a language. A silent one. A way of saying, I belong. Or I matter. Or please, see me. In a world often ruled by rules of class, race, gender, power, appearance became a kind of passport. A painted face could grant access to a court, to a suitor, to a job, to safety. It could protect. It could project. And sometimes it was the only form of power a person could safely wield. Imagine, once more, a noblewoman in a Renaissance palace. Her life is restricted. Her marriage arranged. Her voice silenced. But her appearance? That she can control. She powders, she paints, she perfumes, not because she is vain, but because it is her quiet rebellion. Her only expression. Or a girl in colonial India watching fair-skinned women in advertisements. She applies a cream not to erase herself, but to become legible in a world that reads paleness as value. Or a woman in 1980s Los Angeles walking into a job interview. She wears makeup not to impress, but to appear professional, polished, confident. The rules are unspoken, but clear. Beauty has always been more than skin deep. It has been a survival tactic. A performance. A prayer. A hope. And yet, always, it has also been something tender. Something intimate. A woman in 12th century Japan writes poems and paints her lips with safflower petals. A teenager in modern Nairobi braids her hair with beads her grandmother once wore. A bride in Peru dusts her cheeks with ground flowers as her aunties sing softly nearby. Each act, layered with meaning, sometimes joy, sometimes pressure, but always presence. And that is the quiet truth history reveals. Beauty, in all its forms, has always been an attempt to reach. To be seen. To be chosen. To be safe. To feel, even for a moment, at home in one's own skin. But the poisons remind us that this reaching was never without cost. Lead, mercury, arsenic, steroids, these were not just ingredients. They were evidence of how far people would go to meet expectations not of their own making. And yet, in each era, there were those who resisted. Who embraced their natural features. Who returned to local roots. Who painted not to conform, but to celebrate. And today, perhaps more than ever, beauty is being redefined. Across generations, across cultures, people are choosing differently. Some still wear makeup. Some do not. Some choose serums and sunscreen. Others use clay and coconut oil. Some reject all of it. Others reclaim it, on their own terms. The difference now is not in the ingredients alone, but in the intention. Not how do I change myself to be acceptable, but how do I care for myself, as I am. As this journey draws to a close, imagine yourself standing once more before a mirror. There is no judgment there. No lighting tricks. No labels. Only your face. As it is. As it has always been. Not perfect. Not flawed. Just human. It carries the traces of ancestors, their skin, their laughter, their worries, their rituals. It carries the stories of the past, the good, the complicated, the strange. And it carries the promise of the present, that beauty can be reclaimed. Rewritten. Re-understood. And that maybe, just maybe, it is no longer something to be chased, but something to be rested into. Let us end, then, not with a warning, but with a whisper. Beauty was never truly in the powders or the poisons. It was in the hands that applied them. in the eyes that look back in the mirror, in the quiet longing to be held by the world. And now, let that longing soften. Let the history settle. Let the lights dim. And let sleep come, gently. You are here. You are enough. And you are, always, beautiful in your being. And so, dear listener, we've reached the end of our long, quiet walk through the history of beauty, through dusty powder boxes, whispered secrets in candlelit chambers, ancient jars passed from hand to hand, and the glowing screens of today. You've traveled gently across centuries, from royal courts to humble bedrooms, from painted masks to digital filters, from poison to presence. Along the way, we've seen how beauty was shaped. By culture, by power, by pressure, and by love. We've seen how it could wound, how it could heal, and how it always meant more than appearance. And now, in this final moment, there's nothing left to chase. No ideal to reach. No image to perfect. No mask to wear. There is only this quiet breath. This stillness. This soft return to self. Let your body settle into the bed beneath you. Let your face rest, no longer watched. Let your thoughts drift like silk in warm evening air. You are no longer in ancient Rome, nor in a powdered salon in Versailles, nor scrolling through filtered portraits on your phone. You are simply here. Now. Whole. Let your skin be soft, your breath steady, and your heart light. You carry no lead. No mercury. No expectations. Only rest. Only warmth. Only peace. Thank you for listening to Boring History for Sleep Stories. We'll be here again, whenever you need us, to wander through the past and guide you gently into dreams. Sleep well. You are safe. You are enough. And you are, always, beautiful.